I looked at was I was looking for tire impressions on the driveway. I only saw one set from the moment that drone went up.
A breakthrough in the Nancy Guthrie mystery might be closer than people think, but not due to any DNA revelation. The real key is the tire marks currently being ignored by the public. An intruder pulled into Nancy's drive the night she went missing and drove off with her. Tires always leave behind a trail. With the FBI's comprehensive database of nearly every tire model ever made, investigators could have identified a suspect vehicle within hours if they found a clear print different from Tommaso Cian's Honda. This video explores whether authorities actually provided that database with any usable evidence from the crime scene. Since February 1st, 2026, when Nancy Guthrie vanished from her Tucson home, DNA evidence has dominated the conversation. It is a logical focal point for any investigation. Shortly after Nancy disappeared, Sheriff Chris Nanos confirmed that investigators found genetic material inside the house. This DNA did not match Nancy or any of her relatives. It also failed to match anyone authorized to be on the premises. Detectives were convinced this profile belonged to her abductor. Bloodstains near the entrance and on the walkway were a match for the victim. However, that unknown genetic profile discovered inside became the primary lead the detectives have been chasing. Cracking that genetic code would almost certainly reveal the person behind one of the most haunting disappearances in modern American history. Over 2 months have passed, yet that lead has gone nowhere. There have been no arrests and no identity found for the masked individual seen on the doorbell footage. The significance of this fact is vital to the specific argument being made right now. Every time the genetic trail goes cold, the case desperately requires a different angle to pursue. On that night in February, another piece of evidence was sitting right there on the driveway. It did not require a scientific miracle to analyze. A solution that bypasses the need for warrants to access private family tree platforms. A lead that functions even if the perpetrator has never had their profile logged by the state. It simply required a skilled tech, the proper tools, and an untouched surface. We are talking about tire impressions, for which the FBI has maintained a database for decades. Plenty of people watching this story know that rubber marks assist police work, but few truly realize just how pinpoint and instantly useful this forensic field gets. Therefore, prior to diving into the events at that particular driveway, we must first recognize exactly what analyzing wheel patterns can achieve. The capabilities of this field are massive, and we need to understand what potential leads were available at the scene. The Criminal Justice Information Services Division of the FBI operates the official footwear and tire tread files system. All top rubber companies log their unique tread blueprints within this database. The channel layouts, siping details, lug placements, and every tiny measurement that distinguishes one factory model from another. Once a forensic specialist collects a print from a crime scene and submits it for review, experts can sift through those specs to pinpoint the exact brand, model, and size of the tire that left the mark. From that point, secondary records can cross-reference those tire specifications with the specific vehicle makes and models they were designed to fit. This logical chain transforms a simple mark on the ground into a specific vehicle class, creating a fresh investigative path where none existed. This is hardly an experimental procedure being trialed for the first time in the field. American courts have long admitted tire track photography and physical molds as valid evidence when they link a suspect's car to a scene. Formal qualification standards for these specialists are established and published by the Scientific Working Group on Shoe Print and Tire Tread Evidence. These professionals complete hundreds of hours studying manufacturing, specialized photography, evidence handling, and providing expert testimony in court. This field represents a mature forensic discipline with a proven history of providing evidentiary weight in the United States legal system. The primary distinction between this and DNA, which makes it so vital to this specific case, is quite simple. A tire impression database does not require a suspect to already have a file or be registered in any system. You won't need a criminal history. Forget about tracking down family DNA samples. There is no need for users to sign up for public data pools. If a clean impression is lifted, the database can immediately identify the type of vehicle that made the trip. This car model acts as your primary clue. Your hunt for a mysterious figure in a random car ends here. Instead, you're tracking a precise make that pulled into a certain spot during that one evening. The methods used to capture a usable print will change depending on the texture of the ground. When the environment is perfect for collecting evidence, think wet dirt, slushy mud, or heavy clay tires, leave behind highly detailed, three-dimensional tracks. Pressure molds the surface into the tire's specific design, allowing every tiny slit, groove, and ridge to stay perfectly etched in the ground with extreme precision. Technicians then pour dental stone into these tracks to create a durable, three-dimensional mold that captures every unique characteristic and wear pattern with enough detail for a laboratory match. This cast is sent to the lab, where it is compared against manufacturing specs to generate a vehicle profile. When dealing with harder terrain, the strategy shifts toward high-precision documentation through specialized photography. When dealing with tricky textures, the single most critical method for pulling clues out of thin air, the one that makes or breaks a case, is side-angle illumination. Positioning a lamp at a sharp, low angle, nearly flat to the ground, throws long, dark shadows that highlight even the smallest surface details and ridges in the material. A faint tread mark that stays completely hidden to the human eye under standard ceiling lamps can suddenly become sharp, clear, and readable when a low-level beam hits it from the side. Technicians have successfully found usable tire tracks on cement driveways and slick timber floors, even when those areas appeared to hold nothing of interest under regular room lights at the scene. This method succeeds by utilizing shadow physics, as shadows highlight the depth that flat, direct lighting typically hides. Techs lay down measuring sticks before snapping photos, making sure each detail is recorded accurately enough to match against official manufacturer records. Measurements are completely unreliable without that scale data. Bringing a scale ruler is absolutely mandatory. This typically happens when a car sheds grime onto the pavement, leaving behind rubber fragments or road salt that settles across a home driveway. High-tech static lifting tools can pull those faint markings off hard surfaces and onto specialized film, recording every detail of the tire's unique footprint. Gel lifters perform a similar task on rougher surfaces, picking up transferred debris at a level that allows for database matching. Essential gear like angled flashlights, rulers, static lifters, and adhesive sheets are mandatory for any forensics team processing a crime scene like the Guthrie residence. There is one more aspect of tire analysis to understand before we focus specifically on that driveway's surface. As tires rack up heavy mileage, they acquire specific marks that distinguish them from the generic factory designs. Think uneven balding or tiny cuts from sharp road debris. Those distinct scars are mirrored in the tracks a vehicle leaves behind. Finding these unique flaws allows experts to link a footprint to one specific tire instead of just a brand. Older tires create more distinct prints. That science helps investigators and hurts whoever drove over Nancy's driveway. Everything was ready. The database was open. The surface remained the final question. The driveway is where this case either found its best physical evidence or completely missed the mark. Having reached day 67 of the probe, a sit-down occurred between Brian Enton and Maureen O'Connell, a former federal specialist whose career focused on the agency's evidence response division. Instead of utilizing general field staff or overworked local deputies, the Bureau dispatches this specific unit to crime locations, requiring the absolute highest degree of scientific forensic investigation and processing. These professionals specialize in arriving at crime scenes to pinpoint every type of proof available, documenting findings with total precision, and gathering material in a manner that withstands federal courtroom scrutiny. For her entire stint at the Bureau, Maureen O'Connell executed those exact tasks. When she discusses how a site was handled or highlights missed opportunities, her words represent expert analysis rather than simple conjecture. She utilizes the rigorous benchmarks her department was established to uphold. Upon speaking with the reporter, she noted her immediate action after drone clips of Nancy Guthrie's land surfaced was scrutinizing the driveway. My focus was searching for tire marks on that driveway. I only ever spotted one set once the drone was up. She ignored the blood, the cameras, and the open doors. Her focus remained entirely on that driveway surface. That is because the driveway reveals the path of the vehicle that likely carried Nancy away. Consider the timeline from late January 31st into the early hours of February 1st and what definitely happened there. Around 9:48 p.m., Tommaso Cion pulled his Honda CR-V into the driveway to drop Nancy off. Sheriff Nanos corroborated that he stayed until she safely entered before heading out. Security footage from nearby homes and electronic logs showed him leaving around 9:50 p.m., right as Nancy's garage shut. That marks the final time anyone can prove she was indoors. Authorities eventually impounded Sion's SUV for a thorough forensic sweep, though they handed it back once he and Annie Guthrie cleared lie detector tests and lost suspect status. Every second he spent in that driveway is fully explained. Those tire marks belong to a vehicle the police already know all about. O'Connell focused her review of the overhead video on looking for literally anything else. The mystery variables. Was there another car? Any messed up dirt or gravel? She searched for tire lines heading in directions that did not match the path of the Honda CR-V. We need any hint that a different car drove over those stones between the time Sion left and when the cops showed up. She could only see one set of tracks, and those were the ones supposed to be there. That was the limit of the drone video. Don't jump to conclusions just yet. Recognize the limitations of what news drones actually do versus what they aren't meant for. A reporter's camera flying over a house for the evening news isn't a high-tech police laboratory tool. The camera angle is straight down, and the lighting is just whatever the sun or streetlights provide. There are no measurement markers or height calibrations to help determine actual distances on the ground. Those flyover videos certainly provide a general layout of the land similar to a real estate ad, but drones won't produce detailed clues off a complex, gritty terrain. Imagine a heavy truck loaded with gear and a driver parked on crushed stone after dark. Even a momentary stop leaves faint tracks that remain totally undetectable from that high elevation or perspective. Yet those same marks might be obvious to an expert using a handheld light source at ground level. O'Connell knows this better than anyone watching from home because she is the one who actually uses the special lighting on scenes. She was not claiming a second car was never there based on those aerial images. Her goal was creating a strict starting point by vetting public videos. Did the detectives record that path at the right tilt with perfect artificial lights and exact measurements before the coming chaos ruined the pristine ground? O'Connell formally verified a particular detail regarding the terrain that fundamentally alters the scientific case. Nancy Guthrie's residence in the foothills features a drive made of crushed granite bits. That specific material is notoriously difficult when it comes to developing clear tire impressions. Nevertheless, using side-angled lights and skilled photography helps, as grasping how this stuff reacts during investigations proves vital to seeing why her observations carry such heavy weight. This substance isn't dirt or beach sand. It's the result of mountain rock eroding slowly into a rough blend of tiny, abrasive, mineral grains. It packs down when weighted and stays relatively solid when stepped on. Throughout the Southwest region, this remains a popular choice for home entrances. It is useful, lets water through, requires little upkeep, and blends perfectly with the dry scenery. For a forensic expert, it is a tricky surface, but it is certainly not impossible to work with. The problem lies in the fact that these tiny bits, despite flattening under car tires, fail to retain sharp tire track details, as well as mushier ground does. While wet dirt or slush holds shapes well, this rock dust just packs down, and its top layer stays so shifty that breezes, walking, or more cars quickly wipe away any marks. This is the specific ground where someone parked close to Nancy's front door to carry her out and toss her inside the car. To bridge the divide between that stubborn terrain and a clear image, technicians rely on the specialized side-angled photography used by elite evidence teams. Usually, a flashlight beamed sideways across the stone, in the dark once background glare is gone, uncovers tire patterns that would otherwise remain totally hidden to a normal observer. The central issue, and the only one that truly counts for the technical analysis, is if they used that specific method on the path before other traffic messed it up. O'Connell pointed to the curved path leading to the house as the exact spot where she believes the kidnapper's vehicle was likely idling. We would focus on the tire marks right there in the loop, since that is where I suspect the car waited to grab her. I'm convinced those rear exits were secured, but some fluke likely occurred that, well, redirected everyone toward the street. It might have been that hound yapping in the yard. Who's really sure? That looping path offers a spot by the main porch where any car can park, wait, and leave without needing a tricky three-point turn. Pulling in, idling, and speeding off every one of those movements leaves rubber residue on the stone. If that vehicle lingered for even those few minutes needed to haul an 84-year-old woman who could not walk, the earth captured that weight. It left a mark. Whether those traces survived until the experts showed up with the proper gear and training is what this entire forensic investigation hinges on. Do you feel like the tire track evidence has been overlooked in the media compared to the DNA results? Drop a comment below. If you have been following this series, hit subscribe so you are here when this mystery finally unravels. The worry about what happened to that driveway on the morning of February 1st is not just online gossip. It is a matter of record, called out publicly and officially by several professionals with the actual credentials to speak on it. What the official files reveal regarding how Nancy Guthrie's house was handled as a crime scene is quite revealing. The Pima County Sheriff's Department arrived on February 1st, looked around briefly, gave up the scene within 24 hours, then taped it off again, repeating this cycle over and over. Several media organizations highlighted the inconsistent protocols used to secure the crime site right after its most vital forensic phase, a story Brian Anton's NewsNation contacts eventually corroborated for the public. However, this flip-flopping on site access doesn't reveal the whole truth. The initial responding units are now facing intense heat from their peers in the law enforcement world. One source familiar with the inquiry told Brian Anton that the individuals on site during those early hours lacked any real background as seasoned homicide detectives. That witness alleged the supervisor in charge of the scene had never actually led a murder investigation prior to being appointed to that command. These aren't just baseless internet rumors. This information came from Anton's sources inside the police community, painting a picture of a massive systemic breakdown at the exact moment when veteran experience was crucial. Jennifer Coffindaffer, a former FBI special agent, detailed 4 major blunders she saw in the early stages of this probe. She did not hold back. She explicitly stated the crime scene was left far too soon and blasted the decision to halt search parties by the second day. By day 2, the searches were finished. The lead officer simply was not ready to handle a scene this complicated. And the FBI, which has the elite equipment and specialized evidence teams built for exactly this kind of situation, was not the first agency they called. In a case involving a kidnapping, Coffindaffer stated on the record that the FBI needs to be the very first call, not a request made several days later. And don't think this is just some minor grievance. Your very first call must be to the Bureau. Period. Case closed. It should not be a call made only after the site has been picked over by a squad that, according to their own colleagues, lacked the tools for the job. You can never go back and fix a crime scene. She noted that you can never reclaim those first 48 hours once they are gone. She openly wonders if justice will ever be served, not because the current team is failing, but because of the damage done in those initial hours. Clarence Carmona is the former sheriff of Pima County. He is not just some guy on a podcast or a retired deputy with a social media account. He is the individual who occupied the very chair Chris Nanos sits in now, serving as his immediate predecessor in that role. When he reviewed the official records on how the Guthrie scene was handled, the word he chose was corrupted, not just messy or impacted, but corrupted. Carmona specifically pointed to video evidence showing a car with no reason to be there driving right over Nancy Guthrie's front yard while the area was still an active scene. A pizza delivery car, mentioned in several reports, was caught on camera driving across the lawn while the investigation was supposed to be in full swing. This was not a police cruiser. This was not a detective with a badge or a legal warrant. It was just a civilian vehicle driving over dirt that should have been locked down tight, on a property where every inch near the door likely held vital clues. Carmona explained that this kind of random, unmanaged traffic is precisely what ruins impression evidence before anybody gets a chance to photograph it. Now, look at that alongside what Maureen O'Connell said about the loop in the driveway. She named that spot as the most likely place for a kidnapper to wait. She questioned whether the proper tire track photos were even taken before everyone started trampling all over the dirt. Think about the official record of those first few days. A crew without murder experience. A boss who had never led a homicide case. A scene opened and closed like a revolving door. A random car driving over the grass highlights a security perimeter that was completely porous, failing to protect the fragile prints left in the loose soil. It was not even close. There is a crucial detail about how crime scene borders are managed that most people watching from their couches have likely never considered. When investigators rope off a place like Nancy Guthrie's estate, it isn't just for show, it serves a vital purpose. Every inch within those lines is a potential goldmine of clues until it has been thoroughly cataloged and cleared. You never drop that boundary until the paperwork is finished. The second you open it up, you surrender all control over what touches the ground, from curious onlookers to news trucks idling on the dirt, or even first responders trampling unphotographed spots. Grieving kin often feel a powerful urge to stay near the scene. But walking across that gravel before investigators finish their work can permanently wipe out the physical clues embedded in the ground. When managing a crime scene at a location like New York's house, one with a round gravel driveway and clear signs of a kidnapping, the team needs to prioritize cataloging that ground the very second they pull up on the property. They should start with bird's-eye views, then use side-angled lighting to photograph the whole path before anyone sets foot on it. Only then do you start taking molds of any tire tracks or footprints found. Nothing else happens on that dirt until those steps are finished. That exact order of operations is the gold standard. It is exactly what the manuals teach. This is what the FBI's elite evidence teams live by. The real mystery is whether that protocol was followed on February 1st in Nancy Guthrie's driveway by a squad that lacked homicide experience and a boss who had never led a murder scene. We still do not have a public answer for that. O'Connell's crew shows up with specialized lighting, static lifting tools, and experts trained to pull prints off tricky surfaces like crushed rock. But the feds were not the first ones on the scene. By the time the specialists arrived, they were stepping into a site already handled by rookies, opened up at least once. In the world of forensics, this means the critical time frame for grabbing clean prints from that loop driveway was already ticking away. That window, which opened the second the kidnapper drove off, might have slammed shut before anyone with the right gear even walked through the front gate. Dust and rock impressions do not last forever. A stiff breeze shifts the dirt. Footsteps ruin the pattern. Other cars just wipe it all away. The science used to decode those tracks is useless once the original surface has been trampled. O'Connell is not saying the proof is gone for good. She is far too careful to make a claim she cannot back up with facts. What she did voice was a fear that if the driveway was not documented before the area was unsealed, a massive forensic opportunity might have vanished forever. The FBI's massive database is ready to go, but it cannot analyze evidence that was never collected. We are now 2 months into this hunt. Over 13,000 leads have been checked. The blood found on the porch and the drive has been verified as belonging to Nancy. A pair of gloves found 2 miles out was tested, and while they found a DNA profile for the national database, it did not return a hit. Video of a masked person about 5 feet 9 inches tall carrying a 25-liter hiking pack has been made public. A sketch of the suspect was drawn up and shared. Now, multiple agencies are scouring the Catalina foothills. They even looped in Mexican authorities since the house is only an hour north of the line. Federal agents hit several spots in the neighborhood weeks after she vanished. Amidst all this noise, the question of whether that driveway was properly checked for tire tracks during those first few hours has been totally ignored by the public. Just because people are not talking about it does not mean it is not vital. In a case this intense, technical details often get swallowed by the sheer volume of other clues. The ransom letters made headlines. The grainy security footage got clicks. The DNA was the big mystery. But the dirt driveway where a car waited for a woman who could not even walk has been largely forgotten as a forensic lead. Maureen O'Connell, however, did not forget. The driveway was the first thing she focused on. She wanted to know what that dirt was hiding. The worry she shared 67 days later with Brian Enton regarding how that scene was handled is crucial. The timing of when people came and went, and the gap between what the FBI can do and what the local police actually saved, is the core of this whole debate. If the National Tire and Footwear Database had received a high-quality, properly measured photo of those tracks from that loop, things would be different. Spotting tracks where no car should have been lets us pin down the exact ride with total authority. It gives us a clear lead. After 60 days without a single clue, getting a fix on the car is a massive deal. This kind of break totally flips the script on the search. Here is the other side of the coin. Federal investigators do not just dump every piece of evidence they have into the public eye. For the sake of the investigation, the FBI might actually have perfect photos of those tire marks. They could already have a match from their system and be chasing that lead right now without telling a soul. Just because they are not talking about tire prints does not mean they did not find them. But silence does not erase the mistakes made in those first few hours. Carmona claimed the site was tainted. Coffin Daffer argued the first 48 hours were a total loss. O'Connell suggested the opportunity might have passed before the experts arrived. By the time it is treated like a crime scene, the shoe and tire marks are usually gone. A trio of individuals from distinct backgrounds shared a single anxiety regarding a landscape containing clues. Fearing the authorities acted too slowly, there might be a resolution to the vehicle track mystery tucked away in these files that hasn't reached the ears of the rest of the world. Such an optimistic scenario remains a real chance. Alternatively, the opportunity vanished before experts could show up with proper gear, meaning the most vital forensic category besides genetic code, the location offered, has disappeared. Either conclusion remains on the table. While one provides justice for Nancy, the other represents the sort of systemic breakdown that haunts a file eternally, forcing those in charge to answer for their mistakes. This probe is far from over. Federal agents, Puma County detectives, and lab experts on this assignment are still aggressively chasing down every remaining clue available to them. They deserve credit for that. However, the way this scene was managed in those initial hours is also a matter of public record. The documentation that Coffin-Daffer, Carmona, and O'Connell evaluated from their individual professional perspectives is now firmly established as part of the official case record. Moreover, the concerns regarding tire tread evidence raised by that data cannot be fixed by mere good intentions later on. They depend entirely on what actually transpired on that rocky ground during the early hours of February 1st. When Maureen O'Connell examined the aerial shots of the driveway on day 67 with the specialized skills of a longtime FBI evidence team member, she focused on the right problems. She never relied on guesswork. She didn't just speculate. Instead, she analyzed the scene with a high level of professional rigor to find the discrepancy between what forensics could prove and how well the evidence was actually maintained at the site. Federal authorities maintain a massive database for wheel and shoe tracks, just waiting for a match. Using angled light to reveal details on crushed stone is a well-known, proven method in forensic circles. The path from a simple mark to a specific car and a solid lead is a proven reality that doesn't require futuristic software or legal loopholes. It all comes down to one thing: the physical print. If detectives manage to document that track properly, using the right tools and training before the scene was compromised, then that proof is currently being utilized in ways we haven't seen yet. That would suggest the pavement surrendered its secrets the moment a skilled technician stood there with an angled lamp in their hand. If they failed, however, and that brief window of opportunity closed before the federal forensic teams even arrived on site, then the most vital piece of physical evidence from the scene is likely gone forever. That means the wheels that rolled over the gravel, pressed into the dirt, and drove Nancy Guthrie away from her world are still spinning somewhere, unlinked, unknown, and off the radar. This heavy reality is what Maureen O'Connell felt during the review, and it is the burden this report asks you to carry. Because the better the public understands the stakes at that crime scene and the cost of early mismanagement, the harder it is for these questions to be ignored. Nancy is still missing. Her family continues to wait for closure. The case is still active, and the secrets held by that driveway haven't been shared with the public. If this breakdown gave you a fresh perspective that the evening news overlooked, please share it. Every person who understands the gravity of that scene is someone who won't let this story die. Tell us your thoughts in the section below. Do you believe they actually secured that tire evidence correctly? Do you think the federal specialists made it there soon enough? That's the question that counts, because Nancy Guthrie matters. When people hear about a missing person case, they often focus on the most dramatic pieces of evidence. DNA, surveillance footage, ransom letters, and suspect sketches tend to dominate the public imagination. But one of the deepest lessons from this case is that justice is not built only on the evidence that makes headlines. Sometimes, it depends on the quiet details, the things almost no one notices until it is too late. A single tire track may not look important to the average person. It is just a mark on gravel, a faint impression in dirt, a trace that seems too small to matter, but in the hands of trained investigators, that mark can become a voice. It can reveal what kind of vehicle was there, when it may have arrived, how it moved, and sometimes even who used it. That is the power of forensic science. It teaches us that truth often hides in the smallest and most fragile details. This is why the first hours of any investigation matter so much. A crime scene is not just a location, it is a living record of what happened. Every footprint, every tire impression, every stain, every disturbed stone can hold meaning. Once that ground is walked over, driven across, or carelessly reopened, the story it was trying to tell may disappear forever. And once that opportunity is gone, no amount of regret can fully restore it. There is an important public lesson in that reality. We live in a time when people want instant answers. We want quick arrests, clear suspects, and immediate closure. But real investigations are often more delicate than dramatic. They require patience, discipline, humility, and above all, respect for procedure. The public should understand that proper crime scene protection is not bureaucracy for its own sake. It is an act of justice. It is how we protect the truth for the victim, for the family, and for the future. This story also reminds us that expertise matters. Not every emergency can be handled well by good intentions alone. Some moments require seasoned professionals, specialized tools, and the wisdom to recognize what is at stake before the evidence is lost. That is true in law enforcement, but it is also true in life. Whether we are protecting a child, helping a struggling neighbor, or responding to a crisis, delay and carelessness can deepen harm. Preparation, training, and responsibility save opportunities that can never be recovered once they slip away. Above all, this case calls us to remember the human heart at the center of every investigation. Behind every report, every photograph, and every theory is a real person who is missing, a family still waiting, and a pain that does not end when the news cycle moves on. The lesson is not only about forensics, it is about compassion. It is about refusing to become numb. It is about understanding that every detail matters because every life matters. When truth is fragile, we must handle it carefully. When a family is grieving, we must honor them seriously. And when justice depends on the smallest trace left behind, we must never treat that trace as insignificant. Sometimes the path to answers is written not in the loudest clue, but in the quiet mark everyone else